All right, it is 10:05. We'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Inspector Advisory Committee to order. Vanessa, if you could take roll, please.
Okay, Lee Warren.
Here.
Sean Emmerich.
Here.
Steve Reinhardt.
Here.
Bruce Carpenter.
Here.
Mike Morgan. Dave Motley. Is he still here? I'll come back. Scott Regan.
Here.
Ryan Carroll. Barbara Evans. Dave Motley.
Oh, he's raising his hand.
I didn't mean to raise mine.
Yeah, he's raising his hand to say he's here.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's exactly what he's doing.
Okay.
All right, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. All right. Housekeeping. Tony, you guys, or sorry.
I'll cover it. So welcome everybody. We are doing this virtually, so mute if you are not speaking. You have the raise hand function that you can use, or if you're a member and you want to speak up. But the hand raising function is helpful, and we'll try and help Lee when we see hands up if he doesn't see them. Importantly, if you are not a committee member, will you turn your camera off? And any staff that need to, like when you go to say something, anyone, if you go to say something, you can obviously put your camera on. But just that way we've got the committee showing, and I'll turn mine off in just a second. So just a reminder, stay muted. Cameras off if you're not a member. Raise your hand if you want to. That's a good way to get noticed. And third is the chat. Let's really only use the chat if you're having technical issues. That way the whole meeting is out there. We don't have open meetings issues. And that is it. I'll turn it back to Lee.
All right. Number 3, remarks from the chair. Nothing really too big on this one. Just thank you everybody for coming. Being that there wasn't too big of items on this one, and just for ease of staff, we had this one virtually, but we'll have the next one in January to be back in person for our next meeting, which is our big annual meeting where we elect new officers and everything for the year and shuffle around the committees and that type of stuff. So we'll go back to in-person meetings in January, but we wanted to try to keep it easier for everybody, including staff, to just have this one remote. Number 4, discussion of possible action to excuse committee member absences, if any.
Lee, we did get emails or some sort of communication from both Barbara and Brian that to let us know that they wouldn't be able to attend.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to excuse Barbara and Brian from today's meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Bruce. I'll take Sean as the second. Anybody opposed to that? Or sorry, any other discussion on that? Then all in favor, either say aye or give a thumbs up on the camera.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no or thumbs down. All right, then we have excused those 2 absences. Number 5, ratification of the minutes of the July 12th, 2021 meeting. Does anybody have any modifications that need to be made to the meeting or to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, those will stand ratified. Number 6, general comments from visitors or written comments on non-agenda items. I know we have somebody who wanted to speak on agenda item number 11, which I got that email. But is there any other general comments from visitors or written comments on non-agenda items?
I don't believe we have any, Lee.
Okay. All right, then we'll go move on to reports from subcommittee. Education subcommittee.
Yes. Caught me trying to plug in my cameras again.
Sorry.
Education subcommittee, I don't believe has done anything since our last meeting, just kind of monitoring how the progress and got the CEU manuals out and kind of been working with some of the providers to work out some of the kinks there. But nothing new as far as having a new meeting or having any actions taken.
Okay. And Tony, we're supposed to be getting a supplement out to the education providers in regards to the SOP, legal SOP class, because we approved that class before the new SOPs and everything were actually approved. So has that gone out to the providers for that course?
I'll let Jen speak to that if Jen's on the call.
I'm here.
Yeah, can you speak to that, Jen?
Yeah, certainly. So yes, we are planning for that to go out. We have kind of a process by which we send updates, addenda or supplements when changes are made to rules. So for right now, I believe they go into effect on February 1st. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so our plan is to have those updates to the instructors or the providers before the end of the year, just so that they have time to incorporate them. But we've also advised them to make all of their students aware of the upcoming changes. So we don't want to change anything in the text manual until the actual rules go into effect. But we are advising the providers to prepare the students for the changes in advance of our official change that will be coming out at the end of the year.
Okay. Cool.
And in addition to that, Lee, we have an article on our website that details the changes. It has big watermark on it saying that it's not effective until February 1st, so people know that. But just for anybody, anybody who wants to, I'm sorry, Steve's upside down. It threw me for a loop. Anybody who wants to know what the changes are prior to them going into effect, and which is important, but yeah, as Jennifer mentioned, we don't want to teach people to the SOPs that aren't currently effective yet. So that's why there's a bit of a lag time there.
Okay. Tom Langley, you had your hand up?
I do, thank you. One of the questions, I'm an instructor, so one of the questions that I get, and I do bring up the changes to the students. One of the questions I've been getting is, when is the Texas portion of the test going to change for the new SOP?
Well, we have exam review. Is that annually, Jen, that we do that? I'll let you speak to that.
Sure, it is annually, but they also have a responsibility to us, and we collaborate with our exam vendor to make sure that anytime rules are changed, the exam is updated accordingly. And updates will go into effect on the same date as the SOPs go into effect.
And PSI, who controls all that, we had a meeting with them and went through that review, and they knew that this update was coming. So they've already had a heads up that there were going to be changes to the SOP. So it's not going to be some big shock to them. They should already pretty much be prepared for it. They knew that was in process.
Okay.
Right, they did know. Just for clarification, it's Pearson View, but yes.
Sorry, you're right.
Okay.
All right. Steve, are you okay over there? You're looking a little lightheaded. And apparently your microphone's upside down too. So.
Does he know he's upside down?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I can see myself down there. What I can't figure out in the device settings, I'm just going to turn my camera upside down. I don't know why it's doing that.
There's always one in the group. All right. So I think that's it for education. Let's go ahead and move over to Standards of Practice Subcommittee.
This is Sean Emmerich. Standard of Practice Subcommittee did not meet between our last meeting, but we've had some feedback, some conversations. Me and Tony have had a few conversations about some things going on with the changes, and I believe we're going to talk about most of that. Number 10, we've had some clarification requests on gas appliances and some other things for the report.
That'll work.
Once everything got approved, then we had lots of feedback.
Yeah, that's the way it always works. Nobody's involved for the first 3 years. It's just right after. Yeah. All right. All right. We see your right side up now, Steve. Can even read your T-shirt. That's kind of nice. I like that.
Hey, I'm
Why?
not sure. I think my camera was still on my meds. On Thursday, I had double hernia surgery, so I'm still
dang.
slow.
Wow. All right. Look like you're doing all right though.
Yeah, not bad.
All right. Good.
Didn't affect me at all.
All right. We'll move on to staff reports, executive division.
Good morning, all. I hope you're well. I thought I'd start us, and then if Tony has anything to fill in, he can do that. I don't have anything related specifically to inspectors. I just wanted you to know what was going on kind of in the TREIC world. I am home today, which is unusual just because it's one of these weird days. It's a federal holiday and a school holiday, but not a state holiday. So we're working, but kids are out of school. Anyway, that might be the same for all of you. We continue to be mostly remote. We marched towards a return to the office for September 1st and then bumped that to October 1st and then bumped it really indefinitely until we could see some changes here in Austin. We have come from stage 5 down to a stage 4. I think the last time we were really working to come back to the office, we were at a stage 2. So I think in the coming months that we will march towards that again, but I hope sooner rather than later. I told staff that they could expect to get about a month's notice from me so that they could make plans. There are some of us who come in regularly to the office, and of course, we're really not skipping a beat. We're still processing checks, processing mail, and if those two, and those are really the only two things that have to occur in-house. Everything else can be done from home. Our upcoming commissioners meeting at the beginning of November, our commission meeting, will be in person but with a remote component. We're holding that pretty loosely depending on what commissioners decide to do, to be in person or remote. It looks like most, if not all, will be in person. So that will likely be mostly a physical meeting. There will be a hybrid component, meaning remote, for commissioners who decide to be remote. But staff will be present. We'll do our very best to social distance and probably still be wearing masks and that sort of thing. As we march towards the end of the year, of course, we're in our last round of quarterly meetings to conclude 2021. We've just concluded the fiscal year, and we've concluded that quite well with higher than projected license holder counts, which means more revenue than projected. So we're in a good spot. Of course, we don't want to count on that continuing, so we continue to act conservatively. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll also pass the mic to Tony to fill in.
Thanks, Chelsea. I was waiting to see if anyone had any questions for you first. I just want to add a couple of things. One is just an update. At the November meeting, there will be appointments made to the committee. There are some members that are some positions that are due for rolling off, and so there'll be appointments made in November and voted on by the commission. A couple other things. We have been getting some requests to speak to various organizations about the changes in the SOPs, and so we're trying to accommodate those as much as possible. I may actually reach out to some of the committee members as well to see if any of you guys are interested in doing that. And we will also have a presence in January, barring any unforeseen circumstances, at the TREIC conference, which I believe is scheduled for January in College Station. So other than that, I don't have anything else to add.
Steve?
In the interest of seeing how well our new CEU program went, I did volunteer to teach it a day to see how the slides and the and the actual 8 modules flow together. So I'll be doing that I think in Georgetown on November 6th. For Tropea. I just wanted to put that out there that I was doing that to try to see how well it works. Sometimes it looks good on paper, and I figured try to get into it in the first month or so of it being released, so that way if we need to tweak things or should tweak things, we'll be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think I speak for Jennifer and I don't want to speak for the committee, but I definitely speak for Jennifer where we would love to hear any feedback you have on that, Steve.
Yeah, and I'm sure if there was anybody in the staff who wanted to show up, it's at I don't know, it's at one of the city buildings in Georgetown on, I think it's a Saturday, November 6th.
All right. Is that it, Tony?
Yes, sir. For executive, yes, sir.
All right. Enforcement Division, Mr. Malloy.
Good morning, Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement. See, here's what we've done since you last met. We have 4 agreed orders. The remainder of the report is the culmination of the whole fiscal year, which we'll point out next time when you all meet in January. It will be a lot shorter because it will only take into account because our fiscal year starts in September. This kind of overlaps into this current fiscal year, so it will only be September going forward for the next time I give a report. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Shannon Gatewood.
Good morning. I just wanted to clarify, there was some questions on some of the Facebook groups on the penalty for 210660 failed to use current inspection form. He did that inspection for NACA, N-A-C-A. The reason for the fine, is that because NACA is not a government program?
Actually, I have the attorney that handled this case. He'd probably be in a better position to answer that. But I believe that's the question. Yeah, that is the answer. Basically, it's not a government. It's a, but I mean, Tony, do you want to chime in? If he's available.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, Tony Renteria, staff attorney. The issue is that the inspector, how it works is that the inspector basically gets referrals for inspections, but the inspector is still providing an inspection for the client. So he's not doing a government inspection. He's doing a regular inspection, a regular TREIC inspection for the client. The confusion is because they're doing it through, and this is not the first time we've ran into this situation. So NACA provides software to the inspectors, and from previous experience, the software needs to be adjusted. So it looks like they do have the ability to choose a correct form, but you know, they're not familiar with the software. So we consider that. I mean, so that's why we put it there, sort of as mitigation to the penalty. But the inspector has the duty, obviously, to provide the clients with the appropriate inspection report, and he understands that, and he's going to do that going forward. He's resolved that issue. The big problem we have with these kind of inspections, at least with this one, is that it doesn't provide the preamble information, which is, as you know, is very important. So that's the situation.
Did that answer your question, Shannon?
Yes, appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Was that it, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Education and Examinations Division, please.
Good morning. Again, Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams. The first report before you represents all of fiscal year 2021 qualifying education provider and course applications, both received and approved. Overall, we received 69 qualifying course applications and to date have approved 59 of those. This means that those remaining applications are still in the review process and awaiting the education provider to submit additional documentation. Are there any questions on this report? Okay, moving on to the next report. Thank you. The next report before you is fiscal year to date, well, complete fiscal year 2021 again, report on continuing education. In FY 2021, we received 151 inspector CE course applications and to date have approved 136 of them. And again, any of those remaining are waiting additional information from the education providers. Are there any questions on this report? Okay, I have a couple of other things I just want to touch on from an education standpoint. The new inspector 8-hour legal and ethics standard to practice review course, as we kind of alluded to earlier, became effective on September 1st. There are currently at least 8 providers that have been approved to offer the course through multiple delivery methods. We did send a notice to education providers reminding them to have all students enrolled in the old courses finish those courses by August 31st. So that we had a communication strategy plan that was followed through for that. We haven't received any, concerns that students were not able to finish. And then the only other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is to make you aware that we are still granting an allowance for the new Texas Practicum pre-licensing courses to be completed virtually. This is due to the fact that, as Chelsea mentioned, we're still in stage 4 and we feel the need to continue considering the safety of the students who are completing the course. As a reminder, the virtual practicum requires the instructor to conduct inspections live and on site. The students must be able to hear and see the instructor's live feed at all times. The instructor and students must be able to communicate via audio and video in real time at all times, and no more than 4 students can participate in a practicum inspection. So I just wanted to keep you updated on that. We'll continue to monitor the situation and revert back to live and in-person training when the time is right.
One of the things I wanted to ask on that, and Scott and I had a conversation about this previously, since we are no longer licensing instructors, there was a question that was brought up about the legal SOP course, who is allowed to actually teach it. Now, obviously the provider has to be approved to teach the course, but the actual instructor of the course, obviously that falls under the guidelines of the provider, because the providers are supposed to ensure that those are qualified. But what constitutes qualification for teaching that course?
Okay, that is a good question. Let me pull this up.
Did I sum that up properly, Scott, from what we talked about?
Yeah, and that's what we talked about in 535.74, qualifications of education. And then when you go down to C, for standards of practice, a legal and ethics provider must have an instructor who has 5 years of active license as a Texas professional inspector.
Right.
The requirements are the same as they were prior to licensure. We're just not providing a license, but you still have to meet those qualifications in order to teach the course.
So in order to teach the course, you have to be an actual inspector, an actively licensed inspector with those experience criteria.
Yes.
Okay.
Including, the performance of a minimum of 200 real estate inspections as a professional inspector and 3 years of teaching or training experience.
And you are correct. The impetus is on the provider to ensure that their instructors are doing that. So if through an audit process or something else we determine that's not the case, we can take disciplinary action upon the provider for doing that. We're just not able to license the instructors anymore, but the qualifications are all the same.
Instructors would have to submit the 200, inspection information to the provider, not to TREIC, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, you're right.
All right, just want to make sure we're clear on that. Okay, go ahead, Jennifer.
That is everything that I have for you, unless you all have any other questions.
I'm good. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, licensing division.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sample, Director of Licensing. And the first report is applications received and renewal activity through August. So that was through the end of the fiscal year. And the bottom half of the report shows the inspector application numbers. And you can see that, as a result of the requirements changing, we got a record number of applications this past fiscal year. So, double the amount of professional inspector applications and real estate inspector applications, which those were never that high to begin with, but that's still more than twice as many as we normally get. The apprentice inspectors application numbers didn't increase that much, but overall, we still doubled the number of applications that we received last fiscal year. So the bottom half of the report shows the renewal activity. Still kind of early to tell, to tie that to the number of applications, because an application can be open for a year while the inspector takes the exam and meets all the other requirements. So we're likely not to see, the increase. We likely won't see the increase, and it depends on how many actually get licensed. But you'll see fiscal year 20, the renewal rate there, fiscal year 21, and then to compare apples to apples, we pull in 2019 because those who renewed in 21, they renew every other year. So this is the same population, roughly, because new inspectors get licensed each year. But the next report is the license holder and registrant status report. And this shows a full 13 months comparison. So if you look kind of in the center of the report, inspector license holders, as of August of 2021, we had 4,561 total inspectors licensed by TREIC. That's 386 more than at the end of the previous fiscal year. So again, we'll keep looking at that just to see how many, as a result of the increased number of applications, end up getting licensed, and that'll be reflected on this report. The next page is the graphical presentation there, and so the inspectors are listed in yellow. Excuse me. And then the last report shows the average number of calendar days to process an application, and you can see that as a result of the increase of applications, our processing time did increase. So for, in the center of the report, for professional inspectors, that did go up to 23 days, 24 days for real estate, and 20 days for an apprentice applicant. Those numbers have dropped off already. We're still compiling September information, but we've already seen it kind of level off. So it'll be interesting to see just how much that levels off. And that concludes my report. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Denise.
No problem.
Number 9, discussion possible action to recommend amendments to 22 TAC 535-201 definitions as proposed at the August 8, 2021 commission meeting. Who's got that one? Is that you, Tony? Oh, sorry.
I got it. It's
All right.
Vanessa. So as you can see, this was just a reference change. We did not receive any comments on it, and we did correct, and I think in your materials it was corrected. We had a numbering that was off, but we got that corrected. So no comments.
All right, so entertain a motion to approve as recommended by staff.
I recommend.
Second.
Motion by Scott, second by Sean. Any other discussion on this item? All in favor signify by saying aye or thumbs up on the camera.
Aye.
Any opposed, no, or thumbs down? All right, motion passes. Item number 10, discussion regarding REI 7-6 property inspection report form, section 4, subsection E, gas appliances.
So I'll talk about this one, Lee. We got initially got a email of concern from a former committee member, Curtis Carr. You guys, I think, are all familiar with him. He was curious about the where, if there was he was confused as to where an inspector would report a gas water heater or gas heater, because there's already sections specified for those. Now that we have a specific gas appliance section, I explained to him that this was to allow just for a broader sort of, they can put it there or elsewhere, and that staff would not take any disciplinary action so long as something that was required to be reported on the report was in fact reported in a section that was, you know, appropriate for it. But we've had a couple other people call and express a little bit of concern about this particular change just being confusing. There's a couple of things that we can do. You can leave it as is, and staff can, you know, put an article on the website detailing what the expectations are, and also clarifying that no disciplinary action would be taken so long as the report was, you know, appropriate, or the item was appropriately reported. The other option is to remove that phrase. That's a little bit more complicated, and I'd like to have Vanessa, if it's okay, have her address kind of what that would entail in terms of changing if we were to remove "and gas appliances" from the report.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. I mean, and first, this is to the extent that this is something that you'd want to do in the first place. I think we've received one comment, and Tony has talked to Sean about it a little bit, I think. So this would be another rule proposal. This is the form is tied to a rule, and in the interest of transparency and making sure that everyone knows whenever we make a change like this, so because we just made these changes by rule, you would need to go forward with another rule proposal. The recommendation on that would be to kind of put this a little bit in the queue. Wait and see if you're going to get any other comments as implementation starts and what's going on there, because there could always be other things that come up, and do it, you know, maybe a year from now, something like that. Here it's really duplicative. It's, you know, they could do it here or there, and we're not, you know, enforcement's not going to ding them for putting it in one section versus the other section. So it would be a rule change to the extent you wanted to take out "and gas appliances." And I know that probably seems a little bit silly because it's 3 words, but that way we as an agency have officially put things out. All the different software companies know the change is being made, etc. It would also give you the time to see what other sort of comments you might get. I think, as Lee mentioned, you often get comments. This is true regardless. You get comments after things have been adopted. So you can kind of sit on this one if you want to, see if there really is confusion, see what's going on, see if you get other comments, make that change. And we'll do it through that formal rulemaking process. Does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody have any questions on it?
So if we were to get rid of "and gas appliances," it requires a rule change. It also would require a form change. So it would be a 7-7 if I'm not mistaken.
That's
Correct.
exactly right.
Okay. So that's a whole.
And to clarify, Vanessa's right. We have not had a groundswell of concern about this. The other thing I didn't even mention is that because this is something that's going to be taught in the SOP class, obviously this particular issue can be addressed in the course as to how you would report gas appliances with this language inclusive in the report as well. Just throwing that out.
Well, yeah. I would just say, and to the extent, I mean, you guys, this is open for discussion. Is this confusing? I mean, you are the experts. Is this something that actually ends up working better and we do the messaging and it's helpful? You know, that's for you guys to discuss. Like I said, we've had one comment, and I think Tony's talked to Sean a little bit about it, if I'm correct. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when we created the gas section, that trying to eliminate the confusion, and we initially removed gas from every section and was referring to this section. And I think that's why the gas appliance showed up. And then when we had conversations about, you know, specific items that would relate to the heater, then we reinserted those items back into the gas heater section, the gas water heater section. So if there was a problem specifically with that appliance, we would comment in that section. And I think that's where the confusion came about, or why we had this leftover language.
I mean, it almost makes you wonder if we couldn't have just put other gas appliances, you know, so gas distribution system and other gas appliances.
Yeah.
But I think that's, you know, making mountains out of molehills. I think it seems pretty clear. And as long as I don't think everybody's going to have too much of an issue unless somebody gets dinged for putting it in this section and not in the other section, which obviously, you know, enforcement is, you know, aware of and whatnot. So unless it becomes an enforcement issue, I don't think, as long as it's in the report, it should be taken care of.
The other feedback I had, and I can't share my screen, but the feedback on just the title of the report, property inspection report form, they felt like the word form was redundant. So I just wanted to, because I've had some conversations with people about that, I just wanted to put that out there. And I've had some feedback about that also, removing the word form. But, you know, with these two minor changes, it seems it could be more damaging than good to change them, because we see all the people that are still getting dinged for using the wrong report forms. If we change this again, it could really cause some enforcement problems.
Yeah, let's get everybody to use the right form, period, and then we'll start worrying about what the little minute details are. Tony, Renteria.
Yes, so it would require a rule change to add the word other. If we did that, sounds like that would be clarifying it. Do we still need to change the rule just to add other?
This is the conversation we've been having for weeks. And I'm going to tend to fall conservative on this, you guys, which is it took a rule change to change it. It's already been adopted. It's out there. We've got it out on the website. And I just want to make sure that we give the right notice to everyone. Number one, to all, because I don't know all of the providers that utilize it. I don't know who's pulling it off, who's already pulled it off of our website and who hasn't. So really, in the interest of, you know, formal transparency is what I'll call it, and which I love. I think you do it via rule change. I know it's minor. If we were in the proposal stage, I would have zero heartburn about that. But we're adopted. We're waiting on an effective date. I think you go through the rule making process. I also, you know, this is something that we see with broker lawyer, right? Because they do those contract form changes. There is a lot of value, I think, to gathering the usage, that sort of the minor comments as we go along with implementation. Here, we don't have an issue where someone's going to get in trouble with enforcement. There's just sort of too many places to list the thing. So I think here you could gather, you know, the comment about the form title, this one, and see what else you get out there. And then you can make your changes in a year, in 2 years, when you do, you know, whenever you do your next change. There's value in that, so long as it's the detriment of the inspectors.
Okay. Steve Reinhardt.
Yeah, that's good. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so I was not part of the conceptual plan of that, so I just kind of left it up to myself, thinking of how that would be approached. And the way I was telling my guys was that we have specific gas appliance sections for the furnace and the water heater, and that, like we had 20 years ago where we had gas and we had outdoor cooking appliances, I thought this was a catch-all for all the other gas appliances. It had gas distribution, which is everything kind of from the meter in, so everything under in the house. That was pretty clear. We're not talking the yard. And then the gas appliances was a catch-all for things not more specifically talked about in the SOP and other areas. And that's kind of, it's kind of like the general statement where these are the general rules unless specified. Well, the specificity here is the furnace and the water heater have their own sections. Everything else, gas, goes here. So if I've got a gas barbecue grill that I'm going to look at in the back, it goes here. If I have a gas lantern in the front yard, maybe that's part of the gas system, I'm going to do it there. That's how I saw it. And I think it works great there. It probably could use some explanation if that was the intent. You know, even a diagram, the gas here and furnace, gas here and the water heater, all these other gas appliances go in this new gas section.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the idea?
I think that was the original intent. That was kind of how I read it from there.
Yeah.
It's just
And I think
we have their specific appliances, and then this was for everything else.
yeah, it's kind of like electrical. You know, you've got specific electrical questions or HVAC, and then other. We always just stuck other things in the other. Well, here we've, you know, created something. Gas is important. We create a place where clients can go to rather than looking through the others columns for stuff. And this is where I'll put my, you know, bonding question. Of course, there's a question is because that's specifically in electrical. I end up putting it in twice just to make sure some of those type things. And you probably can't ding for putting it in there twice, but for gas appliances, it's a limited number of things
right
you'll run across other than the furnace and the water heater. And this is the place. It, you know, I like the intent is other gas appliances, and I think the other can be taken care of in a, you know, commentary or FAQ type scenario.
And if that's the direction of the committee, staff can definitely message that. You make a valid point, Steve, when you talk about, and I hadn't even thought about that, the fact that the general provisions of the SOPs say that specifics always apply. So when there's a general provision, you always, you know, err on the side of going to the specific side. So that could even be part of that messaging as well if the committee wants to go that route.
Okay. Scott Regan.
You're muted, Scott.
Scott.
Maybe that'll help. What Steve Ronhart is actually saying is correct. I think everybody needs to go and look at the standards and how we remove the wording. And it was a long discussion about how we do this category, because the wording that we removed and moved in there, it kept talking about gas appliances. So that's why it was both words were put in there. Went through that a whole lot about that one wording on it. And if you actually go into where it talks about in the plumbing and the water heater in the furnaces, it actually keeps referring gas appliance connections. So we put that wording in. I believe Mike had a lot of input on that as well.
Okay. Sean Emmerich.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate what Vanessa was talking about is all through the process. One thing that kept coming up is that just a need to revisit these standards more often than once every 5 years or something like that. So as feedback comes back, you know, over the next year or two, I think that's the perfect opportunity to update these or make any changes that need to be done after it gets out there in the field. People are using it. Because one thing we did talk about revisiting these like every 2 years, just to stay current.
Okay. Tony Renteria.
Yes, two issues that I see here, and I frankly I don't see a problem the way it is, but two issues I see is that you know, we can certainly address this issue through education, just basically explain that this is other gas appliances whenever it's being taught. Second, with regards to enforcement, the, you know, part of rule interpretation is to take into consideration the committee's intent. So that is part of, you know, what the process we go through, rule interpretation. So the committee has made it clear that their intent was to include the word other here as you know, reference to this section. So I don't see an issue. And then the third point, actually Steve made that good point, that we would look at specific versus general. So other gas appliances are specifically listed, whereas this is more of a general. So looking at the context of it and reading the plain language, that's how we would take it. So I don't see a problem leaving the language as is.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I'll just add one thing is, you know, so we're watching this, right? So from an enforcement standpoint, if they start to see issues, if we start to get a lot of questions sent to the GC inbox or the enforcement inbox, we can make note, like, is there confusion going on? Are we seeing issues? And that's something that we can monitor and be ready, like Sean said, for that next go around, and we can modify messaging to the extent it's even necessary. I mean, we can put something out certainly, but I think watching and seeing is a really, you want to watch your implementation for a little bit and gather everything at once.
Fair enough. Anybody else have anything on this item? I think we've kind of talked it to death a little bit.
So, Lee, I just want to get clarification. The committee's intent is that this section is for other than the specified gas appliances. I just want to make sure for when we're messaging and when we do the supplement in the SOPs that's how we address that.
Yes, I believe that is the intent.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yep. All right. Item number 11, discussion and possible action regarding a new form and process for submitting inspector experience logs. I believe this is Denise.
Yeah, good morning again. So we had previously discussed the inspection log form, and there were questions that we clarified well over a year ago of whether this form is required. So we drafted a whole new form, because trying to mark this up would have been a little too confusing. So we crafted a draft of a new form in light of some of the feedback from the inspector applicants, from the staff that's processing and reviewing those, and then in light of some of those changes where you no longer have to be approved as an instructor, we kind of made some revisions to the form and added the note at the top. The most notable thing is, you can use this form. We would like to encourage applicants to use this form kind of as a cover sheet, and then that way that allows them to use whatever format you guys have for tracking the inspections. But then we've kind of got a cover sheet so we can know, okay, this is for this particular applicant, this is the sponsor's name, this is the license number, just to kind of have it all neatly there. A lot of times we do get a PDF of a spreadsheet and it's not numbered, there's no one's name at the top, so it can get a little confusing or a little unclear who it belongs to, who it's for, and not all of the required data is listed. One of the elements that we eliminated was the client name. It just didn't seem like that was necessary for us to have for the experience log if we have the property address. We kind of mirrored as well the broker experience log. Again, this is just a draft, so we are happy to have the committee's input on any revisions that might be needed to the form, any other data elements that we need to add, that we need to collect, or anything that any elements that could go away. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the form.
Steve Reinhardt.
I guess it's my belief and hope that this will help because pretty much every inspector out there uses software that provides a report. I can go in and create a report and I can tell it, give it parameters like date, address. I think the original intent, I know over 20 years ago on the systems, was to allow people that may have done building inspections or phase inspections, because they do provide value, is to give them credit for that, but not full value. So it took at the time like 2 partial inspections on the phases to count towards 1. And I think that's where it came from. I don't know if it's still appropriate. I think since then, for the most part, everybody just assumes that every address is a full inspection. And if somebody is trying to meet the 175 or 200 and half of them are partials, I don't know that you ever see that. So I don't know if the type is really needed. I don't know, I don't know if that's worth it. The form could even be simpler with just date and address, and whatever else you might need if you wanted to do QA on it, like a client's name. But any of those parameters can be satisfied in a query in our software. I like the idea of maybe clarifying that you submit this in addition to any supplemental documentation that actually provides the meat down below. And I think that's kind of where we want to go, because it's just tedious to sit down and have your software print out 200 inspections and then have to sit down and write them. I know I get cramps in my hand if I were doing that. And we kind of accept, I think I did it for some of my guys, but I don't know if it was readily acceptable.
Yeah, we definitely are trying to move away from that expectation that you fill it out either by hand or even, 10 pages of this form, or 20 pages of this PDF form in order to satisfy that requirement. That's not been the requirement. As to the systems and structure, I'm trying to find, I believe there is a requirement by rule, and I might be off base, but if maybe someone else wants to check while I look at that, or if you guys have other questions, because I believe that it is defined in rule, an inspection constitutes checking both structure and systems equipment. So not sure if that's
that could be in the
still
statement.
necessary.
That could be in the statement, or the following, addresses. I don't want to, you can't say it assumes it, the belief is that these are full inspections. I don't think anybody trying to get an incremental license increase, whether it's 25, 75, or 200, is going to have to be scraping around in partial ones, and you would assume they're full, complete inspections for the most part. And maybe the form could actually have something between those check boxes and the body, with a place for them to designate, so we're filling out handwriting below, or checkbox, we're attaching I don't know if you want to call it a spreadsheet, we're attaching supplemental information, so that when you get this form, and it's only one form and it's blank down here, maybe we lost, or maybe he forgot the attachment, or it got separated. But the idea is, you got the top part. My intent is providing 175 inspections, and how I'm going to get that to you is another pair of check boxes right between the two, and it says information provided below, or information is attached, and then it's all blank below.
Well, I would assume it would have to be attached, because this form can't encompass all of the things that are there. So wouldn't that kind of go without saying that it's going to be attached?
Well, you could have 10 of these. I don't remember how many this can hold.
Well, that's why this specifically says you can use it, or use this one, because she just wants this as a cover sheet, or use it as a template to submit a numbered spreadsheet with the following information.
Yeah, and maybe the word use it as a template could be clarified, because actually all you're wanting at that point is that top 2 lines and what you're applying for. You could call that section A and say, fill out section A all the time, fill out section B, or attach a supplement. Something to be clear. The part where it says, or use as a template to submit a numbered spreadsheet. I would, I work with these guys a lot. Yeah.
If it's me, I'm going to fill out that top section, check the box, and in the first line, I'm going to put C attachment, like in the property address line, just so I don't have to manually put in 20 and then add in 180 on my spreadsheet later. I'm going to put all 200 on the spreadsheet. I'm just going to say C attachment.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you have to say, in lieu of an address, C attachment, it could be a box just so that whoever's getting this knows that's what's happening or something. I thought it would make clear, like most our forms, it'll say, if you're using attachment, fill out block A. If you're not, fill out block A and B, something in that line, just very clear step by step. I don't know if that was too hard. If you're making a new form, there's a chance.
Well, I just think if you're having to put in 200 of these darn things, it's a given that there's going to be an attachment with it.
Yeah. And in this list, if you're going to write them in list, it doesn't even have to, the form itself could be the top part, and you call that section A, and then a list where you would write them in would be section B, and that would just be, you know, this form, whatever the form number is. I mean, there could be one. So if you're doing this and you're writing them in, you're going to have 20 of these that'll all have the same heading. There isn't a continuation or part 2 of this form that just has addresses. Is that right?
Well, there isn't something on there that says like page 2 of 15 or 3
Yeah.
of 15 or something like that. I think,
And
like
every-
I said, from what I gather, what she's referring to is this is just your cover sheet. You can use 20 of these forms if you want, but it's a heck of a lot easier if you just put them all in a spreadsheet and attach it to this and use this as a cover sheet. So when they get the package that they're trying to approve, oh, okay, this is what it's for, you know, and they kind of go from there.
And maybe, well, UPS, and maybe just the fact that we're talking about it, we could make it simpler.
Okay. Mike, you had a question?
Well, you guys covered most of what I was gonna mention. I mean, yeah, I don't see the point of having the 2 different systems of structure and the systems unless it's required by rule, but I just think a comment saying that the log has to include complete inspections. That's my first comment. And I wouldn't say to use that as a template for a spreadsheet. I just say you use it as a cover sheet if that's what they choose to do, because a template to me implies that their spreadsheet needs to basically look like that log. And then, but yeah, I totally agree that there should be like a checkbox or something to say attachment, you know, see attachment, or like Lee said, just tell them they can put in there in that first box, see attachment. But I just think it would be clarified just a little bit better. And that's
Okay.
all.
All right, Denise, what do you think?
So I'm taking some notes so we can, you know, kind of make further revisions and bring the form back to you guys. What I am gathering is that because the rule does require or does state that an inspection of both is what constitutes a single inspection. So we can eliminate the checkboxes and maybe add a statement at the bottom, because there is a certification, and this is taken from the old form as well. You know, we can add in there that all the inspections listed are full inspections. And then I have the other suggestion about maybe breaking it up into a section A to put the applicant's name, license number, sponsor's name, license number, and then we can, you know, specify if you're going to use this form, continue filling them out below in section B, or, you know, whatever, or attach a separate listing of the inspections.
Now, on the old form, there was a note, a maximum of 3 complete inspections may be performed each day. Are we putting that back in this form as well, just so that there's clarification?
We can add that back. Yeah, that was probably an oversight. I think we were wondering about the spacing and seeing what we could eliminate. If we're taking off those 2 checkboxes, we should be able to have the space to add that back on. So I'll make a note of that.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions on that? And just for clarification, this draft is the one that's proposing that is going to be modified, and the one after it is the current form, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, Denise?
No, but I would say that, you know, we wanted to make it a little more open and say that if someone absolutely did not want to use this form, the template language was there so that, you know, whatever, and I'm not familiar with the software that inspectors use to track the inspections, but if it includes all of the information on this form, then it would be acceptable to us from a processing standpoint. So whether they're all listed on, you know, 14 pages of this PDF, or a cover sheet and an attachment that includes it, or if it's just a printout. What we see a lot of are PDFs that look like they're exported from Excel. But if they've got the identifying information, that is sufficient by rule and doesn't cause any problems for us processing as well.
Okay. Tony, you had something, but then you put it back down. Oh,
No, I Denise, I think, addressed it. I just wanted her to say in the meeting publicly that the expectation currently, even with the current form, and I could be wrong, that's why I want to clarify it, is that an inspector does not have to fill out 20 of these pages, that they can still include things attached to them.
Right.
Because I know there's been some confusion about that going forward. So that's, she had touched on that already, so thanks.
All right. Anything else on that item? All right, then we will move forward. Oh, correction. Before we move forward, I believe Stan Harbuck wanted to speak on that item. So before we close that out, sorry, I had a note to make sure.
Thank you, Lee. It looks very good, actually. I just wasn't sure where this was headed, so that's why I asked for a request to speak. But it looks good.
Okay. Sorry, I almost missed you there, but I had a little note to make sure. So,
no problem. Thanks.
Okay. So item number 12, discussion and possible action regarding committee member CE exemption.
So I believe this was brought up by one of the current committee members about since you guys are involved in the process of, overall process of these courses to get an exemption from the CE SOP courses for legal ethics course. I'll let Vanessa speak to this item. Huh? What's that? Hold on a second.
Is she getting camera shy all of a sudden?
Never.
Okay, I'm sorry. She'll speak after. This was brought forward because Mike, you're the one that suggested it. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to address it, and then Vanessa will. I apologize, and then Vanessa will speak to it.
Okay. Well, my thinking was that we've been intimately involved for over a year, going over these, having committee meetings, writing lesson plans, writing the new SOPs. To me, I think we have spent more than our required amount of time getting familiar with this, that I'd love to spend some of my education time doing other stuff than just taking this course. I just think we're as familiar with it as we probably can be.
And I've kind of mentioned this in joking to Jennifer as well too. And I understand where you're coming from, because if anybody should know the inside and outside of what's in that 8-hour course, it should be us. But my concern here is, one, consistency. There are, as we all know, and we've all part of different committees and whatnot, that there are some people that participate more than others. There are some people that are much more involved than others. There are some people that just rubber stamp. And if we just give a blanket approval for anybody who is involved in that, we may be cutting ourselves short. Plus, the second item for me is, although I would much rather, there's 20 other things that I could be getting education on. In the end, if we're going through and we're approving this and creating this course, I think it serves a good purpose for us to actually go through that course, just like every other student would have to see if there are modifications that need to be made, or if we're doing something that needs to change as part of that process too. So that's kind of my thing. In theory, it sounds good to not have to take it, but I think in reality, just to ensure the quality of the course itself and to make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing and making modifications, I think we should take the course as well. Steve.
I agree in the sense that I may be the expert or the believed expert in the areas I worked in, but unless I spent time looking at the progression in the other areas that, Mike wrote or Lee wrote, I'm not familiar how well they work and interact until I actually do that. And the only way is maybe force myself to go through the class. Or like myself, I raised my hand and said, let me go teach this thing and make a bunch of notes on how I would do it better. and see how it works. So I'll be, that was my way. Because there's nothing, I don't think there's a better way to learn something than to teach it, because you find all the little pitfalls that you wouldn't otherwise notice.
Well, I always find it entertaining to actually take this course, having been on this committee for a while and then take this course every 2 years. I can't help but go, every time I take this course, depending on who the provider is, I'm like, that's not what we had talked about. That's not what should have been in the course. And there's always something, and I like to, from my side, I like to be able to make sure that whoever is teaching this course is actually teaching the proper information.
Well, and that's, you probably see on my continuing ed, I think I get credit for this particular one 3 or 4 times a year, but I took the course in July from one of the providers and ended up with 4 pages of notes of things that, like you just said, that's not what we intended, and that's not even true. And finding that in the translation, things do get missed. And, maybe there was an opportunity to add a number of things to the instructor manual, or it may have been unique to that provider. They just thought that we got it wrong and they were fixing it.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else have any comments on this one, or Vanessa?
I don't. The only thing that I was going to add is that this sort of exemption does not exist with any of the other courses. And I think you guys hit it on the head in terms of what traditionally it's been thought, that taking the class helps you to be a better course writer because you know what's out there. And you're familiar with what's current and how you can change it. So that was all I had to add. Nothing important.
Hey, don't feel bad, Mike. I had the same exact thought, so do not feel that at all. I mentioned it to Jennifer a few months back, so you were not the only one that was thinking that somewhere down the line. So, all right.
Well, I think the answer is pretty obvious then.
It's kind of like teaching somebody how to do an inspection, then you sit back and watch and see how well they do. I mean, and there's something to doing that.
Yeah. All right. So item number 13, request for future meeting agenda items. I know that Denise will come back and put that inspection log back up there on there. Is there anything else that we have as a future meeting agenda item?
I mean, obviously, you guys will vote on officers next meeting, but I mean that's just a given. But I just want to remind everybody that will be happening.
Yep, time to change the guard.
Are there people leaving us in January?
It's 2 public members are changing out. That's the only ones on this. And those public members will be, I believe, appointed at the commission meeting in November.
Correct.
Oh, 2 new people?
Yeah.
Okay.
TBD.
Yeah.
So it's going to go forward for vote by the full commission in November.
And then we'll know. Oh, it's kind of like getting in the line at the mess hall. You don't know what you're going to get till you get there.
Pretty much.
Mystery meat.
I'm going to try and work that into my presentation.
Yeah. There we go.
I've got something I want to bring up. I don't know if this is, I mean, it's more of a TREIC procedural thing. Don't know if it needs to go on an agenda item, if we just talk about it real quick. So I'm in the process of getting 2 apprentices licensed. One just got licensed. Once he passed his exam, I had to send in the $10 recovery fee, donation, whatever you want to call it. And once, so basically from the time he passed the exam till we were notified that we had to send in the money, it was almost a month before he was licensed and could start inspecting. So I have another guy about ready to take the exam. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get ahead of the game. And I sent in the $10. The $10 was returned to me saying I can't send it in until he passes the exam, which to me is crazy because that means there's a 2, 3, 4 week gap once he's passed the exam before he can actually start inspecting.
Mike,
thinking it's the $10 that did it.
Mike, I feel your pain. That is something that we have tried. We wanted to change in statute. There's a statutory provision that requires the exam to be passed before we can collect that. It was something that sans getting rid of the recovery fund in general last session, it was our backup to at least correct that language, and neither one of those provisions went through. So I do apologize for that, but unfortunately the statute is clear that we cannot collect that fee until the exam's been passed.
Okay, all right.
And if I could chime in with something a little more hopeful, inspector initial applications are next on our docket to move online. And so part of that would involve, from when we send the notification, congratulations, you've passed the test, you now can pay the recovery fund fee. That would be able to be paid online. And so we could eliminate that mail, because it comes down to the mail. We're sending out that notification, you're mailing in a $10 check, and it just takes a while for it to make it to us for processing. So with moving the initial inspector applications next up to be available to be applied for online, that should streamline that recovery fund part of the process as well. So
what kind of time frame are we looking for that to get implemented?
I still need to work with IT because we do have to build it. It takes testing. We want to make sure we've got everything correct. We'll likely begin with professional inspectors because they don't require professional inspector applications because they don't require a sponsor. It gets a little tricky when we need to tie in the sponsor's name and information on an apprentice application or on a real estate inspector application. So we're going to start with the professionals and then model the others from there. So it probably will still be a few months, but we'll keep you guys posted on that update. But I did want to share that because that is, we hate sending those back, but we can't collect. I've tried to tell Tony, is there any way this can be defined in another way? Or
we have worked on it, and we can't. It's got to be a statutory change.
So you can't even just set them aside, not actually enter them.
No, and then that's got liability going with it, to hold on to payments. There's a lot more to that, but yeah, we feel your pain with that.
Okay. Can't send it to the bank of TREIC. I mean, I'm sure that shouldn't be a problem,
Crazy guys.
All right. Anybody else have any other future meeting agenda items? And of course, if you have them after the fact, just email me or email Tony, and we'll get those on the agenda as always. All right. So item number 14, discussion possible. Sorry, what was that?
Who's calling?
Oh, okay. Thought somebody had a question. Discussion possible action regarding future meeting dates. As of right now, we look at January 18th. I think was one of the. What was that?
I think somebody's taking a call, Lee, and they're not muted.
Oh, gotcha. All right, so I think we have the first suggestion was Tuesday, January 18th. Is everybody okay with that date? Okay, I don't hear anybody yet upset about that, so I think we'll go with that one. And I think we're good there. All right, that was all we needed, was just that one date, so I think we're good there. Oh, and then we were looking at April also, sorry. Knew there was something else I was looking at. So that one was also, we're looking at Monday, April 18th, which is the day after Easter and also tax day. So as alternative dates, we can do the 19th or the 20th. Of course, we can set this now and then we can discuss this again in January if things change. But currently, does anybody have a problem with the April 18th? If not, we'll leave it that tentatively for now and then we can discuss it again in January. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Anybody have anything else before we adjourn? All right, thank you everybody for your time. Greatly appreciate it. Have a productive day, be safe. And thanks again, adjourning at 11:20 a.m. Thank you all.
See you.
Everybody.
Thanks.